All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Peter Constantino. I am the business manager with NSFA. Welcome to our discussion on the reopening of our schools. We are delighted to have all of you here. I welcome you to this discussion, and I also welcome our moderator, Gail Rotman. Gail is chair of the Industry Leadership Council. She'll tell a little bit about her background and her district and foundation shortly.
Great.
Okay, and I also see that Haley said from the poll, mainly virtual and hybrid, and only about 4 people or districts will be in person.
Okay, great. Well, hello everybody. Good morning if you're out west. Lucky you. And I guess good afternoon for those of you on the Eastern Corridor or east of, I guess, the Rockies. I'm Gail Rotman. I know some of you, and it's great to see you all. I am the chair of the NSFA Industry Leadership Council, and really happy to be working with Peter and his awesome team to put on some conversations that hopefully help all of us figure out how we move forward in these very strange and challenging times. I run a foundation. It's been 11 years now. I was hired in 2009, and I was the first staff person paid by the foundation. So if you're in the situation where you are the only staff person and trying to juggle it all, I have been there, and I feel you. And if you are now having staff and have the luxury of working with amazing team members like I do, I also have that experience. So I start just by saying we come from all corners of the country and from all types of foundations and all sizes, all budgets, serving very different communities. But I really, in my heart, believe that education foundations are so well positioned to make a critical difference always, but especially in this wild world that we find ourselves in. So I just want to start by saying you are not alone, and to really encourage you, if you are not a member, you are welcome to take advantage of the many great resources of NSFA. But I was thinking it's sort of like the NPR kind of thing. If you love and get your information from NSFA, please try to figure out if there's a way that you could support the organization. We just want to make sure that NSFA stays, super solid and super vibrant, and really the asset of NSFA is all of you, and all of us together is what is NSFA. And so if you find this useful, if you connect with other people, please consider learning more. There's sliding scales, and Peter's team can certainly provide information and work with you. I just wanted to say that, we also want to make sure that all of our organizations not only survive, but thrive. And from the many conversations I've been having with people, I think it's really boils down to foundations being able to be flexible and nimble in these difficult times, being responsive to the needs of your community. Your community is going to be very different than my community, but the key is you all know your community. So moving forward with the strategies that feel like they will resonate with your community. And then being creative. We heard some great ideas in the other session, and I really, I get kind of more optimistic. I don't get very optimistic when I see what's going on in my state with COVID, but when I hear from ed leaders across the country, I get really optimistic that a lot of this creativity and this new ways of thinking about things and new partnerships are really going to be things that last well beyond COVID, when hopefully this is just in our past and we look back and think about this strange time. But I think a lot of the decisions you're making now could have really lasting effects on equity issues, on closing achievement gaps, because we're forced to solve some problems that maybe we weren't able to solve or didn't have the community will to solve before. I just want to, we are going to keep an eye on the numbers, and if they stay where they are, we won't do breakout groups, because what we found is that a lot of people are really just wanting to listen. Hopefully a lot of you will participate verbally, but we're going to keep it, since it's under 40 people, we're just going to stay in one big group and get going. Peter's going to help. I'm going to have just give you a couple of examples of some things we're doing, and hopefully that will kick off continued conversation. If you just use your little hand raise, either your literal hand or your little emoji hand, I'm going to let Peter call on people just to keep make sure we're hearing from a wide variety of folks, and that way I can listen and write some things down for our future use instead of having to pay attention to hands being raised. I'll just give you an example again so that you can start thinking and sharing about your own experience so far. We are a district of about 5,000, growing rapidly with about a 30% population of socioeconomic need. And we sat down right away with key management leaders in our district and really just said, we know you have a lot to figure out over the summer and in the spring about how to teach kids in this new environment. And so we want to talk about what are the areas that we think we are well positioned to take on. And we wanted to hear from them, of course, what are the things that they think we can take on. So we put together right away for our community a five program plan that we have been letting people know and updating as we've moved towards school opening, which for us is this coming Monday, and it's all virtual. I see most of you, there's a hybrid and a virtual for most people. We are basically, our 5 areas are childcare. So we monitored Facebook groups and listservs in our community. And if you have those in your community, you will know they are full of angst, stress, and people really just ramping up about all of the worries and concerns. And so that is a great place to do a needs assessment. And so we, using that, and then we worked with our district to put questions into their survey that they were already going to do, and they gave us a portion of their survey to ask our questions. So we have identified childcare resources and financial aid as one area that we're working on that we had not done before. Virtual tutoring, another area that was new to us, but we are creating as we go. Mentoring, we do have mentoring programs. Those we are looking at expanding to address COVID, but those already existed. Parent resources, we surveyed to find out topics of interest. We are really partnering with a parent-led group. They will put on those topics, but we will support them and partner with them as needed. And then behavioral health, which we have been deep in for several years. We know there's going to be additional need for funds with social emotional learning and just all of the mental health challenges and crises that we are going to face with kids being so disrupted in so many ways. So those are 5 areas that we have kind of decided to make our own. And the district has been, and in fact, I've been surprised at how we're actually getting better coordination with our district than we ever have in the past. And I think that is just the mutual need factor. They realizing that we can help with a lot of the stress that's coming at them from parents. And we can show them, like, we want you to be focusing on teacher well-being and kids learning. So I'm gonna leave it there. And just, I guess, as a question, and anyone can start, if any of those topics are things you're doing and you wanna add to that, or if you are being asked by your district for certain requests that you're either struggling with or you wanna share with the group, that would be great.
Oh, this is going to be bad if I have to start calling on people. Yes, Toba, you could unmute yourself. And then I'll get to you. I see you, Mary. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to say it's so nice to see everybody, and it's nice to be in this national conversation, because I think we're all struggling in one way or another. And I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, and I run the Omaha Public Schools Foundation. We have a district of 54,000 kids, and we have 9 districts in our city. And our superintendent hails from the school district of Philadelphia. This is her 3rd year, and she went out on a limb at 4 o'clock on Friday. School was supposed to start yesterday. 4 o'clock on Friday, she announced to the state that as the largest urban school district with no mask mandate from the city council and with a serious objection from our governor, she called school off and will be 100% remote. I can tell you that not any one of the other districts has, in our city of almost 1 million, no one else has called full remote at this point. So we're kind of groundbreaking. but she has been planning for months for a 1-to-1 ratio. And we just spent $12,000 on Thursday buying 4,200 shields in partnership with the teachers union. And I want to hear from other people, but I just want you to know that was our most recent, that's our most recent contribution, is that even though, we know that they probably already have shields, we're going to have our foundation sticker on it in partnership with the teachers union. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Toba. And before we get to the next, so Gail, we're going to do this completely out of order from anything that we've ever had planned. But Toba, you bring up something which is about PPE, and we were discussing that in the last call, in particular with face masks at the very least that some foundations are being asked to supply funds for. And one of the ideas that we came up with that we wanted to pass along here too is that there's a lot of printing, tchotchke places like 4imprint.com, et cetera, and others that do have a separate supply of PPE. Most of that is the disposable. They do have cloth as well. But one of the things that you can do with it is you can actually imprint on it related to the foundation or the school district. One of the suggestions that came up in the previous call was actually doing that student contest like you would do for like the cover of the yearbook or for any of the other materials, is they reached out to their students and started a contest. And then somebody is going to select a winning look, and that'll be imprinted onto the mask, which they will distribute out to all the schools. But it also delve into partnerships. So I don't want to go too far ahead, but these are some of the topics that we definitely want to make sure that we talk about.
And Peter heard me say in the last call that we had ordered, instead of doing opening day lunch for teachers, since there's no opening day, since we're virtual, we ordered branded masks for all of our 1,000 employees of the district. And between the last call and this call, they just arrived. And hopefully you can see, you might not be able to, but it says for our kids, for each other, and it has our logo. And so it's a way to tell our teachers, I mean, obviously these aren't the hospital grade, whatever, but they are just a way to say to our teachers, like, we see you, we know, we want you to stay safe. And so I do think it's one of the ideas that came up. Interestingly, because I have to talk about boards anytime, somebody made a comment that when they came up with the idea, because we said we might sell the extra masks to just community members to fund some of our emergency initiatives. And somebody said their board said it wasn't right to profit off of masks. And I thought that was interesting that a board would consider that profiting when really all of the money would go straight back into supporting families. So, again, you have to know your people, but I would push back that any profit you make off of selling a mask is actually funding safety and initiatives for your kids. So interesting point there. Mary, I know you had your hand up and we'd love Mary. If you don't know, Toba is the chair of NSFA board, and Mary is a board member as well. So these are great people to know and great resources with gobs of experience at their own foundations. Thanks, Mary.
Well, thank you, Gail and Peter and Toba, everybody. It's great to see you. And I love that we're doing this, and I'm already writing down ideas. So this is so good for all of us to be able to, number one, I think maybe vent our frustration a little bit, because this is hard stuff we're going through, really hard. And our school districts they are in a no-win situation. There is nothing about any of the decisions being made that's easy. And our school district is the state's largest. We've got 45,000 kids. 90% of our kids live at or below the poverty line. And it absolutely breaks my heart that our kids are not able to come back to school. And I was just looking at a report this morning of all of the trauma and the domestic violence, neglect, mental health issues that are just ballooning because of this situation. So our district's going virtual. It's the best decision under the circumstances, but it is incredibly difficult and not great for kids. So I would just share a little bit about what we did. I look back at when this first started in May, and it was complete pandemonium, chaos. We didn't really do what we usually do, which is we like to plan, but we just immediately diverted all of our energy into figuring out what does our school district need now and how do we make it happen. So we got involved in face masks, and we didn't have time to get fabulous ones like you have that are branded. I want those though. But we went out to volunteer groups who started making them, and we were able to secure about 3,000 face masks for school personnel really quickly. And we also printed instructional packets that were given out at meal distribution sites. We ordered tents for the meal distribution folks. We ordered lots and lots of school supplies with a great partnership that we did with Walmart. And these school supply kits were sent directly to kids' homes. We spent $500,000 in no time flat. And then we decided, okay, we have a minute to breathe. Our district, through CARES funding, was able to go one-to-one technology as we planned for the upcoming school year. And they were starting to figure out the resources that they could provide. So then we started having the discussions about, okay, what are the gaps? Where can we fill in, knowing that we can't do every single thing, but what are the most important pieces that we can do? So we are now hot and heavy into school supply drive again for virtual learning school supplies. And we've got good lists put together, working with a vendor. We just placed $50,000 an order that will supply about 1,600 school supply kits for 6 schools, but we still have a long way to go. And I'm doing media interviews and pushing it out everywhere we can. We're getting a great deal of community support that's coming in quickly, but we have a long way to go. We're also making plans for virtual volunteers. So that in itself, we thought we were going to do when kids were in school, at least part of the time. It's going to be all virtual, so we're making plans for that. We're also really utilizing our partnership with Donors Choose, and a lot of our teachers are posting projects for things that they need that are a little bit different than what they would need when they're in a classroom with kids, but they're coming up with all kinds of innovative ways. So I'm actually about to do a flash funding where we are going to fund every project that an Oklahoma City Public Schools teacher has up right now with a large donor gift that I got. And I think finally I will say what?
I was going to ask a question
Yes.
in light of what you're asking. As you're raising funds and soliciting funds to handle, to cover all these projects, are you reaching out to the same donors, your existing donors, or are there new collaborative efforts that you've created to make this happen?
It's some of both, but that's a great question because we really have tried to engage new donors. And with the school kit supply drive, we're trying to reach people and say, if you have $30 buys a school supply kit for a child.
Okay.
So where typically our standard operating procedure is to go after big donors, but this is really allowing us to reach into the group that if you've got $30, if you've got $10, we'll take. And so we're having lots and lots of success with those small donors that we never would have known about otherwise.
I think that's awesome. Thanks, Mary. I do want to say in the last group, and Mary bringing that up again, I do think it's important to note some people are, your first thought is, how am I going to raise all this money? How are we going to meet our goals when people are struggling so much? And of course, millions are. I'm not discounting that. I think it's a lost opportunity, though, because what we have found, and it sounds like what Mary's strategy as well, one, it's a very personal thing for people. And so thinking about a kid, if your kid is safe at home and you're worrying about kids who aren't, that's a really personal ask, especially for a small amount, 30, 50. I also think, at least we found where we live, some sectors are hugely impacted. But let me tell you, realtors, there's a lot of realtors in our town, a lot of them support us. and they are doing a fine business with the low interest rates, and houses are still, people are buying and selling houses. So I really think it's a missed opportunity if we kind of assume, oh, it's the wrong time to ask people, because I really think people who are less impacted, we had a donor double their $5,000 gift without us even asking, because she was like, I have money and a lot of people don't, and so I'm going to dig a little deeper. And we're actually asking our annual donors, we're saying, we know some of you are impacted, and if you need to take a year off, and give nothing, that's totally fine. And if you can dig a little deeper and make up for some of those others who can't, and we're really finding that is working. And so while of course we're not asking restaurants who usually support our events, we're not asking bars or retail shops that are impacted, we are asking others who are less impacted. So just keep that in mind, because I think, like Mary, we're finding we're getting a lot of donors and a ton of new donors. And now we're just trying to track those new donors so that we can do all the good fundraising things, right? If they make an emergency gift, then we're going to want to pull them into sort of more ongoing relationship with us. So other folks have either, ideas about their fundraising, or I see Anne. I don't know, Peter, if you're.
Oh, Stacy, I see you have a question. You can unmute.
Oh, and then Anne too.
Okay.
If I can unmute.
There you go.
So this might go off topic, and yet it doesn't. I'm looking at kind of a bigger picture in some cases. Mary, you mentioned that your foundation is going to do a flash donors choose sweep. That's fantastic. So grateful you have a donor willing to do that. I've actually been researching, and I'm about to present to our board of directors, that we actually start our own version of Donors Choose. While I appreciate Donors Choose, it's sort of that philosophy of, why am I sending my donors somewhere else to give their money? And we have the back-end technology through our website to create campaigns. And I'm just curious if anybody else has sort of tried that philosophy, or am I spinning wheels and shouldn't reinvent the wheel? But I don't like the idea of sending my donors somewhere else to support our teachers. I want them to view us as the resource when it comes to supporting teachers.
Can I hop in just for a second? Gail, do you mind?
Oh, I was gonna ask you too, because I know you have a really long-standing great results with Donors Choose.
We do, and I will tell you.
You know what, just a second. I'd like to, as you're forming your answer, tell me why you think it's a great why you think it's successful using Donors Choose.
It is too long of an answer to get into right now, but Stacy, call me, because I talk to Ed Foundation leaders all across the country about this, who are struggling with the same thing you're struggling with. And is Susie Bruin on the line? Her district actually just adopted using Donors Choose, because once you get your head around it and give up a little bit of that control, it is so wonderful to see what this can do to impact teachers. Number one.
We have teachers who use Donors Choose. I personally give a lot of money myself to Donors Choose, even to teachers not in my district. I totally see the national value of Donors Choose. I'm just thinking, anyway, maybe we'll have an off conversation.
I'll just very quickly, I'll say that the majority of the citizen donors that support our teachers aren't even from our district or Oklahoma. So these are not donors that I would have anyway. So it doesn't bother me one bit. The money that I raise for the foundation to support our teachers through Donors Choose, my donors love this platform so much that they're giving me large sums of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to support our teachers. So we do it that way. So it's very direct. The small donors that donate $1 or $100 or whatever, I'm not losing them, because they're still supporting our teachers, and most aren't even here.
So
and I don't have to vet projects. So
anyway. Then are you just a funnel then? Basically, I'm curious how you
You know, if you don't mind, I'm sorry. I mean, Mary, do you mind, Mary, putting your email in the chat? This is a great example of like the conversations that spur, hundreds of these spur off. But I know it's already 1:30 somehow, and I just want to make sure that we get to hear a couple other topics and others. So I think it's great. And I love the idea, anytime you can raise money outside of your community for your teachers and not have to. So I think there's plenty of rich discussion.
I understand that, but she's not raising money outside of her community. Right. I mean, it's supporting her teachers, but it's not supporting her foundation.
I think it's just I think it is, and I think it's just best to have that kind of an offline. Okay. I'm curious for other folks of the, I can't, because we're doing so many of these, I had to ask Peter, I don't even remember if I gave you the 5 things we're doing. So, but if you all, are you doing parent resources? Are you doing childcare? Are you doing paying some, Toba and others have mentioned PPE. Or again, if you want to share a fundraising, either success or worry about what's been going on for you. Yeah, I see. I know Anne,
I think you had your hand up.
And then Kelly.
Yes.
I loved the word that Gail used at the beginning, pivot, because that so much represents what the last few months have been for us. I know March 13th was our big date. I'm with Highline Schools Foundation in the Seattle area. So if you stick a pin in SeaTac Airport and draw a circle around it, that's our district, encompassing 5 communities, about 19,000 kids, 70% free and reduced lunch before the pandemic hit. Substantially more now, we expect. And so began working with the district immediately. And our big things have really been around basic needs. With air traffic down 95% at SeaTac, our families are hurting. And so by April, we had developed a partnership with World Vision, and we're doing family food distributions to supplement the meal program that the district was doing. We're working on diaper distributions, which I never thought as a K-12 foundation we would be doing, but it's a huge expense for our families and they're desperate for them. We're doing a lot around back to school resources, like others heard, putting together packs for our families. We ordered masks for all of our employees, but then through King County, our area county, they received a large supply of PPE. So we've been able to acquire 100,000 disposable masks free of charge through the county to distribute both to kids and teachers when they come back. We had been planning for a hybrid model. 3 weeks ago, we had to announce going to all virtual. But the big thing that's come up in the last 3 weeks is really around broadband internet service for our families. Last spring, we were able to help the district with hotspots and we got through. However, broadband is a huge issue, and I know our leadership of our district has been working with our national leaders on this. And then our cities, through CARES funding, have agreed to pick up the cost of broadband internet service for those who are within our cities, but it left 1,000 families without internet service. And so just 3 weeks ago, the district asked if we could raise $140,000 between then and the beginning of September to get internet service to the families. And again, what I heard Gail and Tova and Mary talk about, the generosity in our community right now when they see how many of their neighbors and families are hurting. It felt strange going out with ask after ask, but sharing these needs and being out there. But our community has been so generous, and 50% of the donors that have come in since the 13th of March have been brand new to our foundation. And so we really have, using Nextdoor and other kind of ground ways to get the word out about our need, those who are not hurting have really stepped up. So I'm very excited about that and hope it will help us build. We were hoping to move from an event-based foundation anyway to more private donors. This has spurred us to make it happen, and now we just need to continue this beyond COVID.
And before we get to Kelly, Anne and even Mary mentioned it, this is an opportunity for you to break out of the box we've been living in and working in for so long. We focus on this finite group of donors for the most part. Not that we don't take money beyond that, but we do focus on our core donors. And this is forcing us to think out of the box. So we coined the phrase in the last session is, this is the time to work out of the box. You know, where are new partnerships? Be a little more creative. See if we can get a couple of different industries together. As Gail said, you know, the real estate market may be working better, obviously, than say, you know, food service, restaurants and such. And don't be afraid to go out to the families, which may be able to give, as Mary said, $30, $50, with all that's being asked of the foundations to help this districts. It is time to break that mold. Kelly, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, if you're not already marketing yourself as sort of a connector, we had already started doing that kind of a year or two ago, really talking about, because you have all this whole community of businesses and people, but you are the conduit to the school, right? The school can't handle 100 people calling to say, do you need school supplies? Like, oh my gosh, that would be horrendous. And but I think if we start talking to ourselves, we've been kind of talking nationally about how do we promote ed foundations nationally. And I think I don't know if you remember, Toba, those marketing conversations about messaging across the country so that people know what are ed foundations, and we're all so different. But the one thing we all do is we are the connection point between the general community and the community of public school kids and teachers. And I think that if you're not explicitly talking about that in your marketing, your mission, your, you know, all of the elevator speeches, I would strongly suggest you pepper that in there, because I think that's why we're finding success and new donors, is people are like, where do I go? I want to help kids, but where do I go? Oh, Ed Foundation, perfect. And so Kelly, I'd love to invite you to chat.
Thank you. That's actually a great segue. So just a really quick background, my school district is, I guess we'd count as suburban, but we're really more kind of rural in central Pennsylvania, just south of Harrisburg. We have about 3,200 students in our district, and about 25 to 30% are below that poverty level. I also think I might be slightly different. I am the president of the board. We have one professional on staff. She is 15 hours a week as an administrator. So we're just, I feel like we're growing up. We're like an adolescent education foundation. But anyway, I wanted to share two things and then ask a question. Number one, our biggest hit during the earlier spring in April was a program that we established, which was, by the way, the first time we ever just initiated something ourselves. We've always been very reactionary. We always just wait for the teachers to ask what they need, and then we say, oh, I think we have enough money for that, so here you go. But this year we did a program that was really well received in our small town. We called it Double the Good. And as I'm listening to you all, I'm realizing we made $0 from it ourselves. But what we did was served as that connector, so that people could, through our website, they could purchase gift cards for the small businesses that were closed. They could purchase those gift cards through our website, and then knowing that all of the gift cards were given back to our guidance department to be handed out to families in need throughout the district. So haircuts, oil changes, even just a cup of coffee. As the businesses started hearing about it, everyone wanted in. At first, we wanted it to really be sort of necessities, but we realized, you know, for a high school girl to be able to buy a pair of earrings for her mom or her friend at the little local gift shop, that's cool too. So we expanded, and people loved it. People really, really received it well. And so we were the administrators between the businesses, and then collecting the gift cards, and then turning them over to the guidance department. So I'm really proud of that one. We just happened to be working on at the same time a brand new group called the Vision Team, and it does exactly what you were saying, Gail. It is the connector. So for the first time in our history, we have just a brainstorming team of someone from each of our school buildings, business leaders, parents, community leaders, and we just brainstorm about what we would like the foundation to be able to do. And this brings me to my last one, which is 4 of the 5 things that you mentioned are things we talked about wanting to do as a foundation. So if you could give us or somewhere provide me a nutshell of exactly what those things are, the virtual tutoring, the mentoring, we just talked about that, 2 weeks ago, parent resources, all of that. So if you can give us,
Sure.
okay, great.
Sure. I put my email in there because I'll give you a brief answer so as not to take too much time, but there was some interest in the virtual tutoring that other people were maybe considering, but my email is now on there and I would love to, again, because I'm figuring it out like we all are. The virtual tutoring is probably the biggest new thing that we're taking on. That we're doing sort of a two-tiered approach. We are upper high school. So we have, and we talked a little bit last time about when you can come up with a solution that solves multiple problems. And I think in COVID, there are these weird ways where there's some really creative ideas coming and they're knocking out several different problems at the same time, which is great. So one of the problems we had, there's two things. One, we have students in our schools, as you do, who are in high school. We have an IB diploma program. And if you have that at your school, there's a CAS project, which is something specific to get your IB diploma. And it involves service or creativity. And so we have 350 IB diploma kids who are going to need help figuring out how to do a project in virtual times. So this started as an idea to allow them to do their project by being virtual tutors for 2nd to 8th grade students. Now we've expanded it because we also know other high school kids who are not diploma program kids need service hours if they want to cord, need certain, work experience. So we've opened it up and it's going to be adults and upper high school students can volunteer. They'll go through a training, adults will have background checks, and then they'll be paired with kids for, it's called Virtual Pals Tutoring. It is tutoring, homework help, kind of general tutoring. We're gonna have a second tier, so if the tutor the virtual pal realizes, oh, this kid needs to learn math, and I'm not gonna teach them the entire, they really need serious content tutoring. Well, we have partnerships with Mathnasium and other businesses and funding to support that. So it's not meant to be sort of hardcore, that level tutoring, but it's really a couple things. One, if you don't have a parent at home managing your virtual login, synchronous, asynchronous, Google form, Google login, all of that, obviously kids are gonna need support in just managing their time, not getting stressed out about where am I supposed to be, what am I supposed to do? So first is just helping them with homework help, motivation to log in, time management. Two, and equally as importantly, is eyes on the kids, right? So because teachers are going to be teaching virtually, we're worried about, as you all are, kids falling through the cracks. And so having a fresh set of eyes who can see, that my kid's Hazel. So that Hazel, for a few weeks seemed really fine. And she's like, I got this. And then I logged in with her today and boy, she really seemed low and she didn't want to talk to me. And well, then we're going to have a layer of sort of adult coaches who can then resource kids to the counselor, to the social worker, to, we'll be able to call the parent. Our director of programs will be able to say what's going on? We noticed something that, your kid didn't seem to be feeling well, or is there anything we can do to help? So trying to build in layers so that we're not expecting a volunteer to sort of become an instant, do everything perfectly, but we just feel like it's worth having somebody to help a kid feel connected. And then the high school kids, of course, it's super cool if you're in 4th grade, if you have a cool high school kid checking in on you. So that's the one that's taking the most time and energy. A similar program we have is we have education pathway students that also need internships, but they can't get into classrooms to be interns. And so they're receiving some training in reading literacy, and they're going to help struggling readers who are in kindergarten and 1st grade. So we're trying again to solve multiple problems. And I will say, same with the money, as Mary mentioned, we made a form for people who want to help, and I have 100 people willing to sign up already as virtual tutors because they just know they're better off than that family over there. And so, so it's also a great way to engage volunteers. We're finding we can engage alumni who don't live here anymore. And we've always wondered, how do we pull them back in and have a relationship with alumni? So that's a great, college students or young adults who can't give money so much because they're not yet established, would love to connect with a current student. So I think there's some wins, haven't figured it out. And I put my email, I would be happy to have 5 or 10 people that maybe want to brainstorm this with me, because I certainly haven't figured it all out. I think Peter just put up a little, is
Yep.
anyone else doing virtual tutoring that wants to weigh in for Kelly's question or considering it?
Considering it, we've had a lot of different agencies kind of say, we want to help, how can we help? It's like the octopus, we have all these tentacles, we just got to bring them together. So I'm really inspired by everything you just said, because that is, I love the idea of the alumni as well, because my brain was thinking retired teachers, but I think alumni is an even better idea.
Senior citizens who might be kind of isolated right now is another. I do agree. I think Jerry has a great point here. I think social service agencies, we partner with a lot of them, but we are a small city in a big community, in a big county that has much higher need than our community. So a lot of the resources for DeKalb County are spread over the whole county. So we are stepping in sometimes to fill some needs, but Jerry, you're absolutely right. If you have food banks in your area, that's the first place you should go to. We put together resources. So we have a Decatur Cares Coalition about food providers for food insecurity, and we send that out so that families know they don't have to come to us. There's other places in the community. So 100%, that's a great point. And I think, again, you can be a connector to say, hey, did you know there's a food bank? And just making sure that people get those resources. But 100%, I think that's community to community.
And Gail, Haley, Haley put up a poll, and as you can see on the 5 items that you had mentioned, and mentoring is definitely something for consideration of a future topic. And I will let you continue the discussion, but I wanted you all to know that this is important feedback for us, because the conversation doesn't end today when this call ends. In fact, this is just the start, although we have started it months ago, but this is the continuation, of the discussion. I also will make sure that before the end of today, you will all receive, if you're not already hooked up on our social media channels and in our Facebook groups, you will receive a link with the direct access to each of the social media channels, but in particular to the Facebook group, which has been a huge source of being a listserv for many questions and issues that people are having. It's on average of 6 to 8 responses that somebody gets when they post a question. And Facebook seems to be the key area, the key channel that everybody is focused on in terms of trying to gain information. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group, you can request it. And again, we'll have links coming out this afternoon to try to not only answer all these questions here, but any others. And then we'll also be promoting the follow-up on these 5 initiatives that Gail had thrown out as just a conversation starter, to be honest. She doesn't have the hold on it. That's why we're having this conversation, to see what else is going on. And
yeah,
I think,
this is cool. Real quick, I was just going to ask you a quick question. And just because I'm trying to logistically figure this out, like with the virtual tutors or the virtual volunteers, I love the idea of that. I come from a teaching background, so I'm a little bit just trying to process like the student safety piece of that. Like, are all of these people going through getting background checks? Like, are you setting up, like,
Yep.
There is a big risk in some ways, right, of
100%.
setting up adults and students virtually, and
Yes.
where are you on that path? Or do you have any insights, that you figured out that might be helpful for the rest of us?
100%. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because I did not. 100%. Because we have a mentoring program and in person, we have a contract with an online background check. We get the information, fill out a form, we get the full background check back, and we pay for that. So 100%, everyone will have background checks before they can do anything. The other thing we're doing is we're following the lead of our school system. So they use Google Meets, not Zoom. So there will be no Zooming. Everything will be using the platform the school uses. They have a policy to record every interaction with students on the Google Meets platform. We will do the same. So parents and students and volunteers will know these sessions are all being recorded. And I 100% agree. And even with all that, yes, there is risk. The culture of our foundation is sort of manage the risks and like do some good thinking around it. But I think the reality is, whenever you're working with kids and doing anything, so you have to be right. You have to kind of do all of those things. We're going to provide training in partnership with the school system. So making sure, again, adult volunteers know like sort of red flags. And we hadn't thought of this. Somebody else brought up that another district had looked at this. Their board said no, because they were worried about people seeing things in a student's home and then maybe reporting something that shouldn't have been reported. You know, obviously lots of potential risks. And so I think 100% you have to explore all that. And I think we are a little bit entrepreneurial in our thinking that, like, as long as we're mitigating all of those, you know, and paying attention, that we still don't want to not do it, because there's always going to be some potential. But yeah, I think you have to, especially if you don't have background check stuff set up, and training. I think the training is critical. We added an extra layer of adults. So for the high school kids, they're going to have a coach who's going to debrief with them every week. Again, to try to keep as much control over any of those risks.
Our district works with an organization called Oasis with retirees. And so, yeah, this is going to be a big, tough challenge, because we've got some people who are like, yeah, I'm not doing anything over Zoom, you know, and then some people who are willing to. And in fact, we were thinking, oh, great, well, you know, forget it. We're not going to have them this year. And they contacted us and we're like, we are here and we are ready to rock, you know? And so they provide the training, they do the background checks. So the challenge is we're probably not going to be able to get new people in. So, I mean, we're working with them, but we have this organization called Oasis, and it was started here in St. Louis. And I believe there are other chapters nationwide, but it is all for retirees. And it's to stay active, to be volunteers, to learn new things. And that's a really good group, because then they have the resources, vet people, and then we just work with them and
if you can add that, and if you can add just their website in case that, I am a big believer in if it exists already, like as Mary said, like I'm a big believer in like partnerships. And so we are partnering with a lot of tutoring agencies. And I think if there is a way to do it through a partnership, that is fantastic. Like that is, that's really great. We felt like looking at the Facebook posts that people were making, there was so much worry. And also we have a big problem with inequity of pod, the whole pod thing, which I won't get into because I think it's a much bigger conversation. But I think in our community, it felt like it was a good fit, but again, we're a smaller school system, and so
I also feel like, Gail, the fact that your district has like the capabilities in place to record every single Google Meet. Quite honestly, if I'm an adult volunteer, that would be very comforting to me, right? That there's really good checks and balances in there, so I could see why your district, your foundation, and adults feel like there's really good checks and balances and safeguards, and that already exists, right? You don't have to come up with that whole another solution. So that feels like you have a really good structure and process in place to do that. That makes sense to me.
And we'll see. We hope we do, but we might 2 weeks in might say we'll put the brakes on this because we've, so.
Thank you.
Jerry, you had your hand raised.
Oh, you're muted, I think.
You're muted. Unmute.
Sorry. I was just going to say to help you to hit the ground running a little bit quicker, there's a couple of groups that you already have. One was already mentioned, which is your high school students. In Missouri, it's the A+ program. But so they're already used to doing tutoring with the grade school or with the middle school kids. The younger kids are very receptive to be able to spend time with an older student like that. So you've got a group there on the high school side that are already looking for either community service hours or tutoring hours. But the other thing is because regardless of whether you're virtual or hybrid, the whole thing of lunch buddies is gone. I mean, and so you've got that group of adults that have already gotten the background checks. And if you're brave enough to have a one-on-one lunch with a third grader, you're brave enough to help them with their math. And And so that's a group of people that are already used to working one-on-one conversationally with younger students and everything. And so not all of them are going to be willing to do a Zoom tutoring session, but a lot of them will be, and will at least entertain the idea, because maybe they weren't real interested in being a lunch buddy to start out with. And just about anybody that starts never wants to stop.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great.
Point.
And I think putting out a volunteer form or something, like we just put out a general a form, like, you know, that's called Help DEF, Help Our Kids, and it gives different choices, like, oh, I can give 1 to 2 hours a week, and it says I'm willing to work with special students with special needs, I'm willing to work, and that way you'll probably be surprised at all the different response you get. We have one that says I have special talents or skills, so we're getting counselors and social workers and art teachers and people who are like, well, I have time on my hands, so put me to work. So it's a lot of free labor being offered, and some of it is specialized, which is also great.
As we are,
Mhm.
sorry, Gail, I know we're coming to like 5 minutes before the end of this call, but I wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to ask a question of this group while we're still here in dialogue. But I also want to make sure that you know that we are going to make sure you have access, as I said earlier, to the media file. You'll have access to the chat log and any links and so forth that we're all providing. And we had also been asked, and we did use this, do this for the Leader to Leader Forum, and we'll provide the list of the participants so that you can continue this conversation, or if somebody mentioned something during a call and you want to follow up, say with Stacy or with Kelly or Sandra, that you can do so, because again, this is the continuation of a discussion at the end. But as we are coming closer toward the end of this hour, does anyone else have other questions? I know there was a question posed earlier, just in general, asking what people are raising money for. We know some of the programs that were mentioned during some of the discussions, but are any of you raising money for other things that haven't been mentioned or have other issues?
We're fortunate. I'm new to being development and to my job, and I started end of February. So within 2 weeks, we were no longer in the office, and it was complete chaos. And we at the time did help with a food drive, because we have the online funding mechanism that people could just donate the money. We're a 501c3. It was just easy. But we have never been in the social services business. So we made sure that we have kind of drawn that line and said, look, we can't do that. That's not we don't have the resources. We don't have the staff. We can't do that. But this is what we do. We fund education. So where there are gaps in that, like you said, supplies, all those kinds of things, we're trying to help with those things on the ground. And we're fortunate. We're in a very solid, well-funded district. So the number of people we have to serve is a little smaller. But there's definitely people who have lost jobs that used to have a job. So that number has grown a bit. But one of the things that we're starting virtual. But when everybody comes back, we're hoping that will be soon, all the water fountains are shut down. And we do have bottle fillers though. So one of the things that we will be doing as a campaign, we're also part of the Alumni Foundation for our high school. So we're going to be trying a campaign to buy one, get one. So you can get a foundation water bottle, buy one for a kid, because we know the kids are going to need them. And same thing with masks. That seems to be a universal. We're going to try and get some more masks in that. But I love the face shield idea. That was really good.
Cool.
But that's our challenge right now is, we usually do innovation grants in the fall, and all the feedback we've gotten, or the teachers are like, yeah, we got enough to do. Don't talk to us. We're like, okay, we'll talk to you in December.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sandra. We appreciate that. Anyone else to add anything in?
So I'm with Cabarrus County Schools just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I guess the thing for me is our district is very reactive to problems. They don't want to be proactive in thinking about what they need to solve until they get it. So the biggest thing they know right now is internet connectivity, only because that's what they had in the spring that we helped them out with. They really have no idea how many kids that is. I can tell you that we've got 4% that have no capabilities at all of getting cable to their house. We had 10% who did not log in last year when they went to remote learning. Some of that could have been because of the state rules in North Carolina that discouraged it. But I guess for me, we're looking at having to raise a lot of money so that we have a pot of money that we can then respond to the districts as they are so reactive. So when you talk about what are you raising money for, that's the thing we're working on right now is really what are some ways we can do something big and get a bang quickly to have that pot of money that we can then respond.
So you need to raise all the funds and wait for someone to say, this is what we need it for. And it's interesting because you see on the dynamic, there are a number of people who are being asked and they're trying to be proactive. It's very interesting in that regard.
And I would say, I think you can't just, obviously the marketing of that can't just be, give us your money and we'll figure out what to do with it. But I do think like we did leave it really vague. We picked these 5 areas and we really, to be honest, we had no idea what tutoring was going to mean. We had no idea what childcare, and we left it vague and said, we're waiting to hear from the district, but these are the areas. So even if you could identify, like we call it COVID learning needs, that's still enough to get people like, oh, I know what that is. My kids, I'm freaking out. My kid has all the things, all the privilege in the world, and I'm still freaking out. So I think it's really about positioning and messaging. And if you just put some parameters around, like it's going to be responding to families and it's COVID learning support,
right,
that's going to still get people pouring, giving money, because we've seen that. We've just seen that people want to give. And if you give them any kind of topic that resonates, they're going to give. We're out of time, unfortunately, so please.
Well, we're going to take Kelly's question now. She had her hand raised, so we'll go. Go ahead, Kelly. Unmute.
That was just a clap that I love.
Okay.
I love the notion of framing it in a big picture way, because I think my group has gotten a little stuck in the details before we start more asking. So I just liked the fact that you could frame it.
In my community, the worry is that if you say you might do something in our community, you'll end up being roasted on Facebook if
Yeah.
they said. And so I was really trying to be careful. And I also would I had to monitor Facebook for any time like people were saying, oh, like they heard DEF is doing some stuff. So it became DEF is doing everything. So I would see people, oh, DEF is putting people in pods. I was like, oh, no, not doing that. We're doing this. We're not doing that. So I think also making sure you're in the conversations is important.
I would leave you with this, because some of you that are hybrid may find yourself virtual faster than you think. Because we were a school district that has been focused on hybrid, and just as of this Monday night, we're now virtual. So we've had a lot of our donors wanting to give money to buy Chromebooks and technology for these families and students that need it. I just want to share with you all quickly, most technology right now is on back order until spring of 2021. So as you go to a virtual model, just know there are not Chromebooks or iPads to be bought. And it's a big national problem with schools switching to virtual. So we find ourselves collecting all this money, but not even able to get the technology that's needed.
Interesting.
That's what's coming from our school division. By the way, we don't purchase any of that. It's all purchased through our school division. But we've now been asked by the school division to stop collecting money for technology. They literally cannot fulfill the orders.
One of my team members runs an apprenticeship program for 166 HVAC apprentices. In the evening, we have gone fully virtual, and we're providing each of them with a laptop. We did contact Dell, and they're putting together a bid. They can at least supply us with that. Now I realize that's not the same as a few thousand,
Yes.
but we also worked out with Microsoft to get some surfaces for the instructors and for the administrators. So there's difficulty without a doubt, and it's got to be pretty much time sensitive. We need to get it purchased right away because this program needs to start, and we need to do orientation, and we also need to do curbside pickup because we can't meet anywhere in order to distribute these. So we're doing, and I realize it's a smaller scale, but you can understand even with an apprenticeship program what we're going through is it has to be curbside pickup. We have to do all the forms that need to be signed by the Department of Labor and so forth at a car window with shields, with masks, the whole thing. So I just want to use that as a segue, one, to say thank you, Stacy, for that comment, because it is important when you're buying thousands of pieces of equipment. But I want to take this opportunity to thank Gail for moderating this session. Gail, thank you, and thanks to all of you for the work that you're doing on behalf of the districts, the foundations, the teachers, the staff, and most importantly, our students.
Yeah, I just want to thank Peter and his team. They've been awesome to work with, and I really, whatever you are and you're working this, whether you're the sole volunteer board president, that's awesome that you're doing that, Kelly, or if you staff of 10, or if you're solo, you are not alone. You know, look around. This is one call of 3. I agreed to do one. Toba couldn't do it, and so they said, and then Peter kept calling me like, how do you feel about another one? And again, I love seeing all of the different ways that we're reacting, and a total of something like 150 education foundation leaders signed up for this topic. So if that doesn't tell you, you are not alone. I don't know what will, but you know, you're gonna have dark days. Reach out. We're all having dark days. You know, it feels bad to even ask how people are doing, because my answer is always pretty cynical and bad, because I'm in Georgia where things are just getting worse by the day. But, you know, reach out, because no one probably knows what you're going through, but all these people do right here, and many more. So, you know, use NSFA and use each other as a resource, and, you know, we'll see you on the other side. But in the meantime, keep in touch and tell us what would be useful.
And above all, amidst all of the COVID and such that's going on, find something to laugh at each day. We all need to, because we are going to come out on the other side. It's going to be different, but nobody said it's going to be bad. And we actually have a say, and we have an ability to actually affect what that other side looks like. So let's use this opportunity to continue that discussion. Be safe, be well to you, your families. Thank you all for your participation today.